It happened during the third week of the fiscal quarter, a time when promotions were quietly handed out behind closed doors and office politics reached their peak. But no one could have predicted what went down at the head office of Wexley Financial Solutions, least of all the man at the center of it, a calm, sharply dressed black analyst whose credentials raised no questions until he raised his voice. What happened that day was anything but ordinary. It wasn't just a denied promotion. It was the unraveling of secrets, the moment where polite racism met a wall it couldn't climb, and the first domino in a long line of disasters fell. It started subtly. Leon Mitchell had worked at Wexley for 4 years. Not one sick day, not one disciplinary flag. His numbers were consistently at the top. Clients loved him. His record was spotless. The promotion to regional director was practically his. At least that's what every whisper around the office said. Even the regional CFO hinted at it during a quarterly lunch. But when the announcement came, Leon's name was nowhere on the memo. Instead, it was James Lockwood, a man with half the experience and a reputation for barely making quota. No explanation, no warning. Just a "Congrats, James" email chain that exploded before Leon could even sit down at his desk. That morning, Leon had walked into the break room, calm as always, nodding at the receptionist, pouring his usual black coffee into the chipped company mug. No one met his eyes. They were all looking down. James avoided him completely. Even people who once openly praised him wouldn't meet him halfway. Something was off. Something didn't add up. So Leon asked for a meeting with his manager, Philip Baines, a man known for his smug laugh, overpriced suits, and fondness for playing devil's advocate in HR meetings. Baines was the kind of manager who thought giving someone a nickname like Big Guy or Boss Man counted as a personality. He welcomed Leon into his glass-walled office with that fake cheerfulness reserved for lawsuits waiting to happen. "Leon, always good to see you," he said, already adjusting the sleeves on his blazer. "Tough week, huh?" Leon got straight to it. "I need to understand why I wasn't considered for the promotion." Baines let out a breathy laugh. "Come on now, you're great. Really you are. But there's more to leadership than just numbers. It's about presence, fit, you know?" He leaned back like he'd dropped some divine truth. "James just has that energy." Leon didn't blink. "You mean he fits your image of leadership?" Baines's smile tightened. "Let's not make this a thing, Leon. You're a strong asset here. You've got potential, just not this quarter." But it wasn't just this quarter, and it wasn't just about energy, because 3 months earlier, Baines had asked Leon to train James on the new forecasting software, the same software James now listed as a key reason for his promotion. A month before that, Leon had been sent to cover for another manager on medical leave. No raise, no recognition, just a pat on the back and a reminder to keep your head down and keep grinding. And then came the slip-up. The HR coordinator, a nervous young assistant who had just joined from a temp agency, accidentally forwarded the internal evaluation notes to Leon's inbox. The file wasn't meant for him. It had been compiled by Baines and the executive panel during a confidential performance review of promotion candidates. In red highlighted text beside Leon's name was a single line: "Intelligent but assertive. Can come across as too confident. Doesn't blend with company culture." The note beside James: "Eager to learn. Follows instructions. Fits the team's image well." Leon stared at the email for 10 full minutes. Then he printed it. 5 copies. He didn't go back to Baines. Not yet. Instead, he walked into the office of one of the partners, Claudia Morse, a sharp, older woman with an impeccable record and a reputation for fairness. She wasn't there. Out of office all week. Suspiciously timed. So Leon waited, watching, noting things. He didn't speak much over the next few days, just nodded, observed, listened. And then someone slipped him a file. No name, just a plain envelope on his desk one morning, sealed in black tape. Inside were pages, actual hard copies of past evaluations from the last 3 years, handwritten notes, emails, even a transcript of a conversation between Baines and another manager. It read like a script from a lawsuit. Baines: I like Leon, I do, but he's not really what clients picture when they think regional director. Other manager: because he's black? Baines: don't twist my words. Other manager: I'm not. I'm just hearing them out loud. Leon read every line, and what hurt more than the words was the realization that half the office probably knew, and no one said anything. But Leon wasn't just any employee, and this wasn't the first time someone tried to erase him. What Baines didn't know, what no one in that glass tower of privilege and whispers knew, was that Leon wasn't just a finance analyst. He had a law degree, graduated top of his class from Columbia, practiced civil litigation for 4 years before changing careers. And he hadn't changed because he failed. He'd changed because he was investigating a pattern, quietly, carefully. He'd embedded himself in firms like Wexley to build a case so big it would ripple across corporate America like a tidal wave. For the last 2 years, Leon had been compiling data, company after company, patterns, promotions, pay gaps, language used in internal communications, a hidden culture of corporate bias dressed up as team fit, and leadership presence. He had names, emails, voice memos, and now, with Baines' handwritten notes, he had something even better: a smoking gun. That night, Leon drove to an office downtown, unmarked, rented under an LLC nobody at Wexley would recognize. He opened a locked cabinet and pulled out a file marked Phase 2. He placed the envelope from his desk inside, added a voice memo, then sent a text. It's ready. Begin prep. Back at Wexley, Baines had already started rewriting history. He called an emergency meeting with HR to review the promotion process. He ordered the deletion of certain notes from employee files. He told James to keep his head down, just for a bit until things blow over. But things weren't blowing over. 2 days later, a reporter from a major business magazine walked into the lobby, asked for a comment, wouldn't say why, just held up her badge and repeated the same question. Does Wexley Financial Solutions have a response to the internal investigation? No one knew what she meant. Yet. That afternoon, several mid-level managers were called into sudden off-site meetings. Claudia Morse canceled her leave and returned in a fury. The HR coordinator who had forwarded the file, gone. Her desk cleared out. No one even saw her leave. And then Leon didn't show up for work. Not for a day. Not for 3. On the 4th morning, every employee arrived to find a letter on their desk. Plain white paper. No logo. No signature. Inside was a single sentence. What you ignore in silence will speak in headlines. Attached was a QR code. When scanned, it led to a hidden website, a video, a timeline, a map of every company Leon had worked for, names of managers, quotes, evidence. And at the center of it all, Wexley Financial Solutions. The video had already been shared 12,000 times by lunch. News outlets picked it up by 3 p.m. Undercover discrimination. Finance industry rocked by insider investigation. Leon's face was everywhere, but not just as an analyst, not just as a black man denied a promotion. As the man who had spent years unraveling the quiet, smiling, glass-walled racism hiding in boardrooms. And the best part? He wasn't done. Philip Baines's phone wouldn't stop ringing. Legal. PR, the board. Even James had gone dark, deleting social media accounts and requesting leave. Meanwhile, a federal subpoena had just landed in Wexley's inbox, and a new message popped up on Baines's screen, from a private account. It simply said, Check the conference room. Baines ran. Inside, there was no one there, except for a thick folder placed neatly on the table, labeled Part 2, to be released if I'm not taken seriously. He reached for it with a trembling hand, just as the door behind him clicked shut. The door behind Philip Baines clicked shut with a quiet finality that didn't match the panic rising in his chest. The conference room was silent. Too silent. The air felt heavier, like it was charged with something unnatural. He turned, staring at the thick folder on the table, its label taunting him in bold black ink. Part 2. To be released if I'm not taken seriously. He hesitated. For a man who prided himself on controlling every narrative, every room, every voice at the table, this moment was foreign and terrifying. He slowly reached out, slid the folder closer, and opened it. The first page was a photograph. Him, Baines, laughing in the break room with another manager, holding a tumbler of whiskey during a company team bonding event. Below it, a printed transcript of a conversation. Not just paraphrased, word for word, time-stamped, recorded. Baines. I mean, Leon's good, yeah, but he doesn't exactly scream executive material. Clients want someone they can relate to. Manager. You mean white. Baines. I mean polished. Manager. He's more polished than James. Baines. And yet, here we are. The next few pages were emails, screenshots, internal memos he thought had been deleted, discussions about who looked more appropriate in client-facing roles, requests to avoid urban-sounding names on sales campaigns, and his own name attached to more than half of them. He flipped through page after page, sweating. His hand trembled as he reached the last section, a signed letter addressed to the Department of Labor's Civil Rights Division, already dated, stamped, and marked pending submission. It named him, the firm, the decisions he'd tried to bury. And then came the twist that dropped his stomach straight into his shoes. There was a second folder tucked behind the first, thinner, but heavier somehow. It was marked simply, Private for Board Review. Inside, copies of Leon's academic record, his law license, and his bar membership. A full resume that revealed the truth. Not just a former lawyer, but one with a near-flawless litigation record. A legal strategist who had once advised on 2 federal workplace discrimination cases. And at the bottom, a bullet point that hadn't made it onto his Wexley employee file. Special Advisor to the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, EEOC, 2016 to 2018. Leon hadn't just been gathering data. He had been studying the exact system Baines thought he was immune from. And now the system was turning on him. The door burst open. Claudia Morse stepped inside, her heels clicking sharply against the floor. "Close it," she said coldly. He did. She sat across from him, her eyes locked on the folder. "You've been busy, Philip. So has Leon." "This is out of context," he started, trying to regain some footing. "It's being weaponized." "No," she said. "It's being exposed." Baines stood up. "You can't take his side." Claudia stood up too, faster than him. "He didn't ask me to take a side. He didn't need to. You did this to yourself. I warned you when you kept passing him over. I told you we couldn't afford to look biased." Baines laughed bitterly. "So this is about optics now? He set us up." She didn't flinch. "He set you up. I'm just here to clean up the mess." The board met that evening. A closed-door emergency session that dragged past midnight. Outside, news crews hovered near the building, camera lights like distant lightning. The leak had gone national. Senator Marks retweeted the video. Civil rights organizations released statements. Wexley whistleblower trended on social media for hours. By morning, Baines was placed on immediate administrative leave pending a full investigation. His keycard was deactivated. His email access revoked. But it didn't end there, because Leon wasn't done yet. He reappeared in public the following day at a press conference, standing behind a podium at the National Press Club, calm and unshaken in a tailored navy blue suit. A sea of cameras pointed at him. "This isn't just about me," he began. "It's about a system that allows performance to be ignored, excellence to be dismissed, and people to be passed over because they don't fit someone else's image of power." His words weren't loud. They didn't need to be. He laid out the blueprint. How he embedded himself in firms across the country. How he tracked decision-making language, collected offhand comments. How he watched men like Baines mask bias behind boardroom buzzwords. Then he announced the launch of the Clarity Initiative, a legal advocacy network, backed by multiple law firms, built to support employees facing silent discrimination in corporate America. Reporters fired off questions, but Leon only answered one. "Why Wexley?" He smiled faintly. "Because they were arrogant enough to think no one would notice, and I was patient enough to wait until they were wrong." The fallout was swift and brutal. The EEOC launched a formal investigation. Internal emails were subpoenaed. Other employees began coming forward, quietly at first, then in waves. Anonymous testimonials flooded online platforms. Stories of being silenced, overlooked, mocked in meetings, ignored in promotions, punished for asking questions. James Lockwood resigned within a week. 3 directors retired without notice. Shareholders demanded an emergency audit of company hiring and promotion practices. And Leon? He didn't return to Wexley. He didn't need to. His new office was already established. Interviews lined up. A book deal in the works. His voice became one of the loudest in the movement. Not because he shouted, but because everything he said was backed by irrefutable truth. But Baines vanished. No press statement, no apology. His home was sold. His wife deleted her social accounts. Rumors swirled. Was he hiding in Europe, negotiating hush money, planning a countersuit? It wasn't until 3 months later that anyone saw him again. And it was on the courtroom steps. Leon stood, briefcase in hand, waiting for his team to arrive. Across the courtyard, flanked by his lawyers, stood Baines. His once perfect hair was thinner now, his suit looser, and in his eyes was something Leon hadn't seen before. Fear. Not the kind of fear that comes from being caught. The kind that comes from realizing you built your entire life on a lie, and someone finally pulled the thread. They locked eyes for just a moment. Then Leon walked past him, calm, focused, because this wasn't personal anymore. This was about every person who'd ever been told they were too much of something and not enough of something else. This was the reckoning. And as the courtroom doors opened, and the cameras flashed, and the world watched a once untouchable man answer for his quiet cruelty, one thing became certain. Leon Mitchell had exposed more than just a manager. He had started a movement, and this time, the system would have to explain itself in full view. No more whispers, no more glass walls, just truth and consequences.